Hello, these are the notes for Chapter 2, Lesson 8. This is about paying interest, and we're going to be calculating what simple interest is on our loans or accounts of balance. So, interest is basically the amount paid or earned on your money. So, it's either the amount that you pay for borrowing money from a bank, or it's the amount that you earn from a bank by depositing your money in like a savings account. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at, first of all, when we borrow money from a bank and we take out a loan, okay, the bank requires you to pay an additional fee over a period of time, and that extra charge is called interest. Okay. When you don't pay off something like a credit card bill, every month you're going to accrue interest. So you're going to add interest to the amount that you owe for your credit card on top of what you've already used. Okay. The other way that we are going to be calculating interest is basically the amount that you earn when you deposit money into an account. So this is when we put money into a bank account. It's a savings account at a bank, and we earn interest on that money. By letting the bank have it, they give us a little bit of extra money every year. Okay? And basically, principal, this word principal here that we're going to be talking about, is basically any kind of money that is either borrowed or deposited, and that is considered principal. Okay? When we're calculating interest, simple interest, we're looking at this calculation. So basically the amount of interest that we earn is based on the principal that we borrow. Okay. So this is the principal, which is our P, multiplied times the rate, okay, which is our percentage written as a decimal. Our percentage is written as a decimal, and over time. And we calculate simple interest using the amount of time in years. So if it's part of a year, we would use a decimal representing part of that year. If it's 1 or 2 years, it would just be the 1 or the 2 for the years. So you just have to make sure you're calculating based on years. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples here. This first one, we have Arnold. He puts $5,000 into a savings account. And we need to figure out if the account pays 1% of simple interest, how much simple interest will he earn in an amount of time. Okay, so we are going to say that he is going to leave that in his account for a total of 5 years. Okay, so we have that information here. Okay, so we're solving for interest because that's basically what this question is asking, is how much simple interest. So that's the part we don't know. So we're going to assign a variable for that. We'll call it I. And then we're going to take the principal. So how much money did he take out? He took out $5,000. And we know that it pays 1% interest, and we know that it's going to be over 5 years. So we have all the information we need to do to make our calculation. So here we have our 5,000. We know our rate is 1%. We turn that into a decimal, correct, by moving our decimal place 2 places to the left. And that would give us 0.01. And our amount of time that we're leaving our funds in there for is 5 years, because we have our number of years in time here. So we would need to put this into our calculator. We have our calculation here. We're going to take 5,000 times 0.01. We have 5,000 multiplied by our rate, which is 0.01, times our number of years is going to give us a total of 250. Okay, so we have our calculation here. We know our interest is going to equal $250. Okay, so that's how much it would be if we had our amount in the account for 5 years. So now we want to do a calculation based on 6 months. Okay, so let's think about what we would need to do to change our calculation here. We're still trying to determine what our interest is. Our principal amount has not changed. We are still putting $5,000 into a savings account. We know our interest rate remains the same, so it's going to be 0.01. but our amount of time is changing here, right? So we have our 6 months here instead of our 5 years. So how is that going to change our calculation? Well, I know that 6 out of 12 months, because there's 12 months in a year, is equal to 1/2, right? Because I can divide both of these by 6, divide both by 6, and I know that 1/2 as a decimal is going to be 0.5, right? I think if half a dollar is 50 cents, so that is going to be what I'm going to use for my calculation here, is 0.5. So I'm going to take this amount now here and put this into my calculator to solve. I still have my $5,000 that I'm putting into a savings account. I'm going to multiply that times our interest rate, which is still 0.01, and we're going to multiply that by our time, which we know is 0.5 of a year, to get a total of $25. Okay, so I know that my interest is equal to $25. Sorry, that looks horrible. $25. Okay, so if I had to write this as a statement, I could say after six months, the interest will be $25. Okay. So that is what I have for this one. Okay, so that's the first page of our notes. It's example 1. Let's go ahead and move on to page number 2. Okay, here we have page 2 of our lesson 2.8 notes, calculating simple interest. We have our second example here, which is Rick's parents. They're borrowing $6,300 from the bank to buy a new car. The interest rate is going to be 19% per year, and we want to calculate how much simple interest will they pay if they take 2 years to repay that loan. Okay, so we have our information that we have in our story problem, and I'm going to highlight some of that for us so that we know what we're looking for here. So we have the amount that we're borrowing, our $6,300, which are $6,300, which is going to be considered our principal. We have our interest rate of 19% per year. And then we need to calculate how many years they're going to take that loan for. And they're going to take that loan for a total of 2 years. So based on that information, let's see if we can go ahead and do our calculation from that. Okay, so we're going to be calculating our interest, which is our I. And we know that that is going to equal our principal times our rate times time. Okay, so let's do our calculation, set up our problem first of all. And let's do that by saying that our interest is going to equal $6,300 multiplied times our rate, which is 19%. I'm going to turn that into a decimal, which is going to be 0.19. And then we're going to multiply that times our number of years, which in this case is 2. So I'm going to go back to my calculator here, and I'm going to put in those facts. We know that it's $6,300. We're multiplying that times our rate, which is 0.19. And then we're going to multiply that by 2 because we're borrowing this money for 2 years. So this is the amount that I get. I get $23.94. So I can go back and show that my interest in this case is going to equal $2,394. That's a comma. And that is how much they would pay to borrow $6,300 for 2 years with a 19% interest rate, with calculating simple interest. Okay, it's quite a lot, isn't it? So let's take a look at another problem. Let's go down here. We have our friend Luis here, who is taking out a car loan of $5,000. So that is the first piece of information we have here. He plans on paying off that car loan in 2 years. At the end of 2 years, he will have paid $300 in interest. And we need to calculate what the interest rate was. That's the piece of information that's missing in this problem, which is a little bit different than the previous ones. Okay, we still use the same formula to calculate this, right? We're still taking our interest, which is our principal times our rate times time. And we're going to set this up as an algebra problem, right? We have our interest rate, which at this point is $300, and we know that that is going to equal $5,000, correct? Times our rate, which we don't know. That's the information that we're looking for in this problem. And we're going to multiply that times 2 because we know that he is borrowing the money for 2 years. So let's set up our calculation. We still have 300 on this side. And we know that that's going to equal 5,000 times 2. And I can do that in my head. And I know that's 10,000. And then we have our R term here because that's the rate that we're solving for. Okay. I need to get the R by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by the number in front of the R, my coefficient of my variable. So I'm going to divide this side by 10,000 and this side by 10,000 using my handy dandy calculator, right? So I have my 300, which was my top part of my fraction there, and I'm going to divide that by my 10,000. And this is the information that I get, right? I get 0.03 as my rate. But what does that mean when we're talking about percentages? Okay, so I need to be able to take my rate, move my decimal point 2 places to the right to calculate that it is 3% interest. Okay, so in these problems, when we're solving for something like that, we just need to solve for the variable that we do not know. So let's look at another example. We have Jenny here who has put $1,500 into her savings account. And that savings account pays 2.5% simple interest. How much interest will she earn in 9 months? Okay, so we're back to our regular calculation here of interest equals principal times rate times time. Let's see what information we have. We're calculating for interest, right? We can look at our word problem here and say that we're solving for interest so that we know that that's going to be our variable. We know what our principal is. Okay, and we know what our rate is. We have 2.5. We're going to move our decimal place 2 places to the left, which is going to give us a rate of 0.025. And then we know that it's 9 months. So that is 9 out of 12. Okay, if I divide both of these by 3 to simplify this, I'm going to get a 3/4 as my fraction. That is a 3, sorry. And if we were to figure out what that would be as a decimal, 3/4, okay, we could do that one of 2 ways. We can put it over 100, right? And we would multiply that times 25, which would give us 75/100. So I know that this as a decimal would be 0.75. So I can add this to my calculation here. Clean that up because that looks a little messy. Okay. And now I can do my calculation. I can take 1560. I can multiply that by my rate, which is the 2.5%, that is a decimal, and then multiply it times the 9 months, which is 70.75 as a decimal. So I get a total of $29.25 as the amount of interest. So she's going to earn $29.25 in interest over those 9 months. Okay, so those are the notes for today. Feel free to ask questions if you have them. There is a homework sheet for this, of course. And good luck and do your best. Thanks so much.